And Amy, you are more than welcome to take it away.
Thanks, Jim. How do you handle an inheritance? How many of you would wish that people would just walk right into your office with an inheritance? I know we all do, right? So we're going to say the client walks into your office. You guys can pretend it's me and I inherited 200 grand. I have no idea what to do with it. What do you tell the client? That's always the million-dollar question. Well, the inheritance response is, what is the correct response? We should put it in a mutual fund. Let's look at a fixed index annuity. Life insurance is the way to go. Gold is a super hot commodity right now, or let's talk about this. Let's talk about this is the correct answer. So here's where you get your true discovery intentions. You want it to be part of a larger conversation. Like Jim always says, no pain, no help, no client. He still needs to trademark that. But you really just need to ask about the inheritance. You just want to ask 3 questions with them. Those 3 are, what do you want the money to do for you? Some people have different versions of what they see that they want to have. Some people want a house, a car, an investment, you name it. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but the average inheritance is actually spent within 90 days. Normally 90 days is all they have it for if they do not see an advisor, because people blow it on a house, a car, a sports car, wrap it around a tree. That's not something you want to have happen to your client. Then you want to ask the client, can you handle losing principal? Some people have different risk tolerances. Some people have different time horizons on their side where they don't have as much time to retire as other people do. And what's your time frame for needing the money? Do you need a chunk of it now to pay off some immediate debt? Do you need, forget it, I'm going to put all of it away for later and save it for a rainy day fund. What is their time horizon for needing that money? That's always a crucial one to ask your clients, because what we think versus what they tell us are always 2 different things. And what do you want the money to do for you? So ask them some open-ended questions and just listen. Listen to what they have to say. So examples are retirement, saving for that big purchase like I was alluding to the house earlier. Higher education. Last I knew, college is not getting any cheaper in a year. I know it was when I went, and Jim probably knows what it went with when he went. It's not going down in cost. Maybe a lot of people want to pass this on to their heirs to leave more than, grandma's cookbook as a legacy. So those are all great questions to ask your client. The 3 question is, can you handle losing the principal? Close-ended, yes or no. They say yes, that's one avenue to go down. They say no, it's another. 10%, you're going to keep digging. Well, what do I mean by that? Keep asking questions. Ask questions until we find out, like Jim says, no pain, no client, find out what's going on here. So you want to have more of those conversations for you. So just keep digging to ask questions. And what's your time frame for needing the money? Under 2 years, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, or over 10? Now, some people might say, okay, I've got a $200,000 inheritance. I want to take out a chunk of money to buy a new car, but I want the rest to sit somewhere else. I want to make sure it's safe and nothing happens to that, because that's now my new nest egg. Have those conversations with those clients about that.
All right, Amy, why don't I take over? Appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone. Back to Jim we go.
So, like Amy said, it's crucial that you ask those 3 questions. What do you want the money to do for you? Can you handle losing principal? And what's your time frame with the money of having to need it, so to speak? And once they answer those 3 questions, then you can sort of reverse engineer and go backwards to basically filter down to figure out what product or products would be appropriate for them. So that's what I want to do now is sort of go backwards from those 3 questions, starting with number 3. What's your time frame for actually needing the money? And so we'll start with under 2 years. 2 years time, there really isn't a chance for that money to grow and grow substantially. So realistically, your only real option is a money market or a CD, a short-term CD. Now, with that said, there's always an exception to the rule. So if someone comes up to me after and says, well, what about this product? It could work because every client is different. But from a generalization standpoint, If the client is going to need that money in under 2 years, you really can't do anything with it. For those of you who have your securities license and use mutual funds or variable annuities or something like those vehicles, what you have to understand is, unlike the past couple of years, historically, what normally happens in the market is if you take any 5-year period, you're going to have 4 good years and 1 bad year. So for example, if the client needed the money within 2 years, you don't want to have to put the money in, let's say, January of 2018 and have them lose 20, 30, 40% of their principal. So that's why if it's under 2 years, you really got to keep it liquid for them. So let's take the next time frame, which is 2 to 5 years. So you have as you see, you have a couple more options of what you can go in. Because now for 2 to 5 years, we can start looking at maybe some sort of conservative growth. We always have that money market and CD to fall back on. You can also go put them into, say, a 2, 3, or 4 or 5 year MYGA, a multi-year guaranteed annuity, basically a fixed annuity. For those of you who are not familiar with a MYGA, it's basically a jazzed up CD. It gives usually a better rate of return, and the money goes tax deferred. You can also possibly go into mutual funds or investments. Again, if they're looking to take the money out in 2.5 years, I probably would shy away from going into a mutual fund or investments, because again, what if we have another 2008? Individual bonds, you can absolutely go into an individual bond for 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. The drawback to bonds right now are the rates are so bad. The only way you can really get something that is halfway decent, if you go for a long duration, like 10 plus years you purchase a bond for, or you get a really high risk bond, something that is maybe triple B or triple C rated. That's really the only way right now that you can really get a decent rate of return in individual bonds, but it is a viable option. And then a fixed index annuity, an FIA. If it's 2 to 3 years, maybe an FIA is not the best product. But if you're talking about 4 or 5, and definitely 5 years, an FIA could be a very viable option for them. So that would be 2 to 5 years. As you'll see, the longer you can go, the more options you have. 5 to 10 years, now things really start opening up on what you can go into. You see, there's no more question marks there. So definitely money market CD, definitely MYGA. Now the mutual fund or investments really can come into play if your securities license. Because say we have the typical historical return, 4 good years, 1 bad year, now the client can do pretty well. Individual bonds, if you're going out 5 to 10 years, still the rate of return is not going to be great. You can probably do better in other places, but it's definitely a viable option. And fixed index annuities and variable annuities, the client doesn't need the money for 5 to 10 years. Absolutely. They are viable options of different vehicles that the client can possibly go in. Now let's go 10 plus years, where you got a client that has an inheritance and they don't need the money. God bless them. Now, if they don't need the money, then again, like 5, 10 years, everything is on the table. You see, everything is the same, except I've added one thing. There are possibly different types of life insurance that could come into play and be beneficial for the client. Again, say if they're talking about 15, 20, maybe 30 years, absolutely life insurance could be a viable option for them. But again, what we're looking to do is filter down to find out what the best product or products are for the client. Now we're going to move to question 2. That question is, can you handle Mr. and Mrs. Client losing principal? And this is pretty straightforward. If they say, yes, I can handle losing principal, then you can go into either investment or non-investments. If they say, no, I can't deal with losing principal, Then you got to stay away for anything that can lose principal or lose value, and only stay with investments that are guaranteed or that cannot lose any money in there. And what I would say to that also is, once you ask the client the question, most 60 plus people, most baby boomers, the retirees and pre-retirees, most of them will tell you that they cannot handle losing principal. It's when you get the people who are getting inheritance in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, because they're working, they don't mind if they're going to lose principal for the possibility of gaining a better return. But once you start hitting the high 50s, 60s, and 70s, most people are risk averse, and they do not want to take any chance of losing principal. And then from there, once we figure that out, whether they don't mind, whether their answer is a yes or no, we can still filter down. If they say yes, then mutual funds, investments, and variable annuities come into play. If they say no, then you have the fixed, the guaranteed type vehicles, money market, CDs, MYGAs, individual bonds, or fixed indexed annuities. So do you see what we're doing here? So now we're figuring out, first from a time frame. The client says, for example, they would like to use the money in 5 to 10 years, then you go with those products. Then you figure out, do they mind losing principal? Depending on that answer, you're filtering down more products that are available to them. And then finally, the first question we ask, the open-ended question, in my opinion, the most important question: what do you want the money to do for them? And then what you want to do is, once you've filtered down, find out what product or products, it could be one, it could be more than one. Find out which of those, by what the client says, fits the best. And it could be just one, or it could be more than one. Once you figure out, maybe let's say the client, for example, they only want to go in for 4 years. They want the money in 4 years, and they don't want to take any chance of losing principal. In that situation, I would probably say their best vehicle would probably be a MYGA, a multi-year guaranteed annuity, that fixed annuity. So what you want to do is find out whatever the product is, and then explain the product to them in a way that they can understand. Explaining a MYGA, explaining a CD, a money market, that's easy. Explaining a fixed indexed annuity, or God forbid, a variable annuity, that can be a lot more complicated. So you have to understand how they work in a way that you can explain it to them. I always say that you need to understand the products well enough to explain it where a 5th grader would understand. And if you know the products well enough to explain it like that to a client that they do understand, you're going to have a much better chance of them saying, yes, let's move forward. And if you decide to move forward, that's when you take the applications. This stuff is not rocket science. When the client comes into your office, I have an inheritance, what should I do? That could be part of a bigger question. That's why, see if you have a pain. If this is a client who you've gone through retirement planning with, you've done everything with them, and they just have this extra money that just came in, or they don't want to have to deal with any sort of questions about retirement planning or anything like that. They only want to talk about the inheritance. Then that's fine. Go through the 3 questions. So this is more of a shorter one today, but it is a very important sales session that we talked about. Because trust me, if you're in this industry long enough, it is going to happen where you get that phone call, or the client walks in your office and says, you're not going to believe this. I have 100,000, I have 200,000, I have 500,000 that I got in an inheritance. What should I do with it? So in conclusion, have that initial conversation. Is this part of a larger retirement planning conversation, or is this very finite and laser focused? Ask those 3 questions. Filter the products, both by asking the questions and then reverse engineering and go backwards. Once you figured out the product or products, that would work best for the client, give them the conclusion. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I think these are the two best options for you. Let me explain both of them to you. Explain both of them and say, Mr. Client, I think maybe this one would be possibly a little bit better, but it's totally up to you. Which one do you like better? Once they say, well, I understand both, let's go with your option. Let's go with this product. That's perfect. I just happen to have an application with me. Go figure. Fill out the application. And if you have any hookups, you're not sure of anything, what I would just say is leverage us here at DMI. This is what we're here for. If you're not sure about a product, you're not sure about what the client really should go into, give us a call. That's what we're there for. We're there to help you to make sure you understand the process, you understand the products in a way that you can explain it to the client. Because again, if the client doesn't understand what you're looking to accomplish, they're never going to say, yes, let's move forward. Unless, of course, they trust you 1000%. And for some clients that is the case, most it's not. So we've gone over a very quick and easy topic today that can get really, really tough, really quick if you don't have a set process. And that's why I always try to say, you know, what we're teaching is not a turnkey approach where you go this, this, this. It's just a process. If someone comes into you and says, I have an inheritance, that could be a 1 appointment close. It could be a 2. It could be a 5 appointment close. But if you stick to a process, you have a much better chance of them either becoming clients for the first time or cross-selling with more products. And at that point, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to take a drink of water and open it up to see if anyone has any questions. Amy, anything you wanted to add?
Like Jim said about reiterating to use us, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you guys grow your business and be successful. Anything you need, we're here to help. So please use us. We are here to help you guys. We're here to help you guys be successful. So everyone is successful together.
Yep. And while we're just waiting a couple seconds, I would also reiterate that if there are any topics that you want us to go over, feel free to shoot Amy or myself a quick email. Now, if there's something that we haven't covered over the past few months, feel free to let us know. If you want to, if you forget maybe some of the topics that we've gone over previously, or maybe you're new to DMI, this is your first sales session. I know that Chauncey, this is your first one, and welcome aboard.
Welcome.
So if you want to know what any of our other sales sessions have, just shoot us an email. We can send them out to you. And if there's any of them that you want to get a recording of, we can send that out. Until DMI builds our private YouTube channel, unfortunately, this is the way we're going to have to go. So anything that we've previously done, we've recorded, we can send it out to you until that time. Oh, look, we must have done a fantastic job. Excellent. I'm surprised that Johnny Boy didn't have any questions, but hey, that is fine. That means we did a good job.
That means we did a great job.
Yeah, in conclusion, for today, we just want to thank you. Our goal is that if we can give you one thing that you take out of this sales session, it was worth it.